When I'm here, they all wanna see me like this.
Hello, and thank you so much for tuning into my channel. I'm going to ask that you go ahead and hit that subscribe button and hit the bell so you'll be notified anytime I upload. Today we will be talking to First Lady Jamina McFadden. She is a native of Lake City, Florida, and she is the wife to Pastor Calvin McFadden of St.John's Congregational Church in Springfield, Massachusetts. She has several degrees and 2 lovely children. And so I want you to stay tuned until the very end so you can hear her story and be blessed by it. Thank you again, and don't forget to subscribe. So how long have you been First Lady now?
So we've been married since 1996, so 22 years this year.
And were you in ministry before you met him?
Yes, so I've been in ministry all my life, really. Not as a ministry leader, but more as a servant. So growing up involved in our youth department and serving in the greater community. So I've been serving in ministry, since I can remember. I've never not known service in ministry.
What areas did you work in?
So before we got married, of course, I grew up in our children and youth department. So serving there, which meant if you were in the children and youth department, you served on the usher board, you sang in the choir, you participated in, we didn't call it drama then, you did the Christmas and the Easter play, and you had Mother's Day speeches or speeches for every occasion. You participated in, it wasn't a formal club like a Toastmasters, it was just the public speaking ministry. When I grew up, everything that we pay for our children to do now, we did in the church. So there was a dance ministry, there was sports. So really serving just as a participant, and then of course Girl Scout, being a part of the Girl Scout ministry as well.
Mm-hmm. Were your parents in ministry?
Well, my mother was a youth leader, and she worked very closely with seniors, and then my father was a deacon, so they were both deacon and deaconess. I grew up in a Baptist tradition, and we just grew up in a family where you served in church, and that was just something we saw in our grandparents and our aunts and uncles and cousins. It was just part of our life, part of our culture, our family tradition.
Mm-hmm. When did you meet Pastor McFadden?
So Calvin and I met his freshman year in college. I was a sophomore. We met in student government. He was the sophomore I was the sophomore class president, and he was the freshman class president. And so that's when we met, and we developed a friendship. But it was just that, a friendship.
Yeah.
He told actually one of his classmates that when he first saw me, he knew I was going to be his wife.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see that. He was just a really smart guy on campus. His freshman year, he became a pastor of a church. And so, he was just one of those students that you looked up to, but nothing beyond that for me.
So he's been pastoring a very long time then?
He pastored his first church when he was 18.
Wow.
So he's been in this. He was a pastor when we got married.
So how did you feel about that, being now First Lady when you married him?
I really didn't have any preconceived notions about the role of a First Lady. I grew up in my church. My pastor was a widow, so I didn't have an image of a First Lady that I grew up with. So I had an opportunity when I married Calvin to create what I wanted it to be. And so for me, that meant being true to myself, being my best self, and being in a position of service, because that's the way I had grown up in ministry and serving my home church. So I think it really worked out for both of us. There was no competition at all. I saw myself as his partner, his wife first, and for me, as important a role as this has become to, I guess it has become, I'm still first his wife. Mm-hmm. And so whether or not he's the pastor of a church or he's a college professor, it doesn't matter, I'm still his wife. And so that's my first priority, being his wife and being a mother to our children.
Mm-hmm. Would you say you were pretty comfortable with the position?
I think I was, and I am, because I had a chance to make it my own.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't get caught up in other people's preconceived notions about what I was to be. And that's something that I've tried to teach my children as well, that they should be true to themselves and not get caught up in what other people say to them and what other people feel they should do. Because I found out early that when you do that, you find yourself on an emotional roller coaster, because you're trying to appease the different personalities in the church, and that's just impossible. So for me, the best route was to be myself. Mm-hmm. And because I'm being myself, I'm comfortable in who I am. And so that works out for me.
Mm-hmm. You're not originally from here?
I'm not. I'm a native Floridian. Both my husband and I, we're native Floridians. I'm from North Florida. He's from Tampa, which is the central part of Florida. Mm-hmm. And we moved to New England 8 years ago. And for us, this really was a move of faith, because we didn't know anyone here. We weren't coming to a situation where we had a support system. So we really had to trust God to work all of those things out for us. A home for our family, a school, a loving church, community involvement. All of that had to come together. And I think, I know through our prayers and through the support of our family and really the different things we were taught growing up, we were just able to make an adjustment. Because for us, we knew we were here for ministry. Mm-hmm. That's why we ended up here, so we know that's our purpose, and because we're here for that sole purpose, we trust that God will provide, and He has provided everything that we needed.
Tell us about how you got here.
So let's see, Calvin's first church was in Central Florida, in a place called DeLand, and then he moved to Palatka, Florida, and it was in Palatka when we got married. And during that time, he was in seminary in Atlanta, so we made a 4-hour commute every week to Palatka for church. And then from Palatka in Atlanta, we moved to Tallahassee, where he was sent there to start a church. And we were in Tallahassee for 10 years. Mm-hmm. And then God reassigned us to Central Georgia, Warner Robins, where Calvin served as an executive pastor. And then from there, after being there 2 years, God released us from that assignment, and that's how we ended up in Springfield.
And what was the translation like? As far as the weather, I know that was a big that was a big jump.
The first year we were here, we were told before we moved here, there are no major snowstorms anymore. It's not like it used to be in the 80s, and it's been years since we had a major snowstorm.
Wow.
And that first year we had major snowstorms. Yep. We had a tornado. We had, there was actually an earthquake, a hurricane, and within the first 2 years there was a major nor'easter in October. So we experienced the different aspects of the weather. The good news for us is because we had no experience in New England, we expected snow, and so we thought that when it snows, you just go out and then you enjoy the weather, not knowing that when it snows you stay in. But I think we've adjusted. We have. And when I think about it, because we've been here 8 years, our children are 9 and 10, this is where they've spent the majority of their lives. So this is what they know. This is their commonplace for them. So they've never known 365 days of warm weather like we grew up in Florida. So it's different.
Yeah. Tell us what it was like raising them up in the church.
So, Catherine was our firstborn, and Catherine was born 10 years after we had been married. So we had, in a way, defied the expectation that as soon as you get married, then the next step is to have children. Right. No, we had a chance to really grow together and enjoy each other and be in ministry together. So when Catherine was born, we were pretty grounded in who we were as individuals and as a couple. And then our son, Calvin Jerome, was born 15 months later. so they're 15 months apart. And I think it's really been, I think it's been fun for them. They get to experience being a part of a larger community, a larger family of people who really aren't their blood relatives, but who, for the most part, show them love. And people have stereotypes about pastors' kids, but I'll say they've been pretty fortunate with the churches that we've attended. And I think a lot of that is that we keep them grounded too, to know really it is the kindness that you're shown and that you receive, you don't necessarily deserve. So you should be grateful to those who show you that kindness. But I think they like it.
Mm-hmm. Do you think they feel the pressure of being a pastor's kid sometimes?
I try and ask them that, and from what they've said to me, no. Because for them, it's what their dad does, but it doesn't change that he's still their dad. And they know there's a level of responsibility there, that it's a very important job. But I think what they see at home is what they see in public. So there's no real, I don't know that they feel any pressure at this point from being a pastor's child. That's something I'll have to ask them. But I don't think they do. I think at this age, they're still enjoying the benefits of it.
How important is it to take family vacations and spending time with them?
Oh, wow. That's essential for us. We are very protective of our family time. My husband and I believe that we only have a certain amount of time to raise our children, and that's one of our most important responsibilities. Well, that's our most important responsibility to them. And so spending quality time together when we're away. When we first moved here, we used to leave the area the entire month of July to return south, to go back to Florida and also vacation. Now with our positions, we aren't able to do that with my work position outside of the church, but we still make sure that they get the vacation time, that they're spending time with their family, their extended family, their grandparents who come up and visit quite regularly. And so you have to guard and protect that time that you have together, because you get 18 years and then they're really out for the most part. They're gone. So I think it's very important for us to have that time to create those memories for them, so that when they look back on this experience, just as people, that they'll have a childhood that they can be proud of, that they made mistakes, but they had a chance to learn from those mistakes, that they had a very supportive family structure, and that they had opportunities to do different types of things.
What has been the most rewarding being First Lady?
I think it's really a privilege to experience the different seasons of life with the members, to see them go through births and marriages and promotions on their jobs and relocations and other transitions, see their kids go to college, to see family members accomplish different things, and even the privilege of sharing with them when their loved ones pass on. So just being able to connect with them in different ways, and just the privilege of being a part of their lives and some of their most, at some of the most vulnerable times for them. I think that's one of the benefits. I don't look at it as a burden. It's an opportunity to be in prayer with them. And so it can be emotional at times, especially when you have those that you may have a personal relationship. So there's more than just the love there for them as a member of the church, but there's also a love for them as a person. And it can have its emotional toll, but overall, I think just the opportunity to share love is a blessing in this role.
What has been the most difficult?
I think one of the most difficult things in this role is the disappointments, how sometimes you make investments, and I say investments, how sometimes you sow seeds into people, and things just don't work out the way you think they should have worked out. But I think even in that, there are lessons to be learned. And when you can walk away from one of those situations and say, if I had it to do all over again, would I still sow that seed? And when you can say in a sincere way, yes, I would, then you know as an individual, you've grown in your faith and you've matured to know that, even with the disappointments, I'm sure I've disappointed people. We disappoint each other, but, being able to just deal with that disappointment and to continue to love and to sincerely pray for people when you've experienced that. That's one of the challenges, but you grow.
You mentioned working outside of here. How important is it to you to establish yourself as an individual?
So I think that gives me an outlet. It allows me to be a part of the greater community that I live in. And for me, I've always enjoyed working outside of the home. It's just another way for me to connect. Really, it's a way to do ministry because you have access to, and you're exposed to different people, and they get a chance to really see you in a different environment. And what I like is when I pray, they see the consistency, that what you see on Sunday is the same person if you have a conversation with me during the week. I'm the same Jamina. And I think that's important for the community of believers to always just be ourselves, so that even in those moments when you're in traffic and it's a very challenging situation, whether you're cut off or something, you have to repent too for the conversations or the one-way conversations you may have with other drivers. But I think in all of it, just it's an opportunity to do ministry outside of these four walls, and that's why I enjoy working. And I have friends who they've chosen different paths for themselves. Some are full-time stay-at-home moms, which is a job within itself, and others they work within the ministry of the church. And what I found rewarding is to learn from each of those different experiences, including my own, and not being in a judgmental position where you say, this person is not as valuable because they don't work outside the home, or they're more valuable because they work in ministry. No, it's all ministry. And when we learn from each other and we don't have expectations of each other in that way, but more so respect the path that our fellow First Ladies have chosen, then I think that's showing a level of maturity, a level of love, and a level of support for them. And I think that's important.
What advice would you give to a new First Lady?
Be yourself. Don't try to imitate other people, because it's just hard. It's hard to keep up with these and just the whole the images that others have for you. And I'm just a firm believer of being yourself and being your best self. That's key. Being your best self to bring glory to God. Because all the other things you just learn as you go through it. And each person, there are similarities because there's similar spirits that you'll find within the congregation. But just enjoy each moment, enjoy the experience, learn from experiences, but always be yourself. And don't try and be anyone else. It's not going to work out for you. It really won't. And let people see that you're human and that you're real. I think sometimes people create this facade that they're super spiritual, or they're so, they're just so angelic that they really can't connect with people. And what's worked for me, so as I say, be yourself, what's worked for me is to meet people where they are and allow them to meet me where I am, and for us to together grow in faith, grow in God's word, just grow to be the people that God has created us to be.
And lastly, what would you say to the First Lady that wants to give up or walk away?
Don't. Hang in there. It does get better. We pray. it can be very challenging at times being married, period. And then when you're married and your relationship is somewhat visible to everyone, so they're watching you to see how you react to certain things that are said in the sermon, or they're watching, or you, whether it's whatever that challenge is, and it can be tough. But I believe that we are placed here as people to show love and forgiveness, and to do our best to bring God glory. And at the end of the day, as individuals, we have to give account for our actions. And I just say try, exhaust all options, with God being your first option. That's always the best option, but don't be afraid of counseling. Don't be afraid of seeking the advice of wise mentors. When you're at your wit's end, just hang in there and really lean on your support system. Which leads me to, so going back to the advice, try to have a support system that's not connected with the church. Have friends that can remind you of who you are. Have friends that can openly share with you that you can receive from them. And I feel like I'm rambling, but just hang in there. Bottom line is hang in there. And it's going to be a roller coaster. You're going to get frustrated. Sometimes you may even feel, what's the benefit in hanging in there? And I think through prayer, God will reveal to you why it is you should hang in there. I often joke with my husband about the time in our marriage. So Catherine was born 10 years after we had been married. And there were times that I think we probably both, I think it's the 7-year itch or whatever they say it is. But I think there were times we were both like, okay, why don't we just head out? There weren't a lot of times. But, after an argument and you're used to having your way, it can just, why do I have to hang in here? And I think we live in a culture where it's easy just to quit, and it's harder to stick to it. And I often think, had we not remembered what we said to each other, that one of us will look at the other one in the casket, that, Catherine could not have been born. Our son, Jerome, would not have been born. We wouldn't have had this opportunity in Springfield. We probably, we never would have gone to Warner Robins. What would have happened? And so hang in there, because you don't know what God has in store for you. Easier said than done, most definitely. But when you look at it, hang in there. You just have to do it. And you have to figure out how you're going to do it. But it's not easy, but it can be done.